Shalom and welcome to the weekend edition of the Daily Dose of Hebrew. We're continuing our work in Jeremiah 7 in Jeremiah's temple sermon. We're actually getting toward the conclusion of it. The Lord has said in the previous couple of verses, you cannot stand here thinking that you're living in security because it's God's temple, even though you practice all sorts of violations, transgressions of God's law. Just go back and look what God did to Shiloh in the past, if you want an example. But now in verse 13, he's coming to the conclusion, and we're going to see some very strong language here. So let's go ahead and read the text in Hebrew as we get started. Va'ata ya'an asotekem et kol ha'ma'asim ha'ele ne'um Adonai. Va'adaber elechem hashkem v'daber velo shema'atem ve'akra etkem velo anitem. And we can almost do ... like that, because the text is going to continue. This is the because of this and all of this, and the conclusion will come to in verse 14. Well, what do we have here? Well, and now. So this with the adverb now, it's getting something. Okay, we're coming to a final conclusion. Because of this, on account of. So we know we're getting a very strong causal idea. This is the reason for that because something is going to be happening here in the following verses. And now, because of. Now, what do we have with this thing here? Well, because of. Let's take off a pronoun suffix here. Asot. This looks like a feminine plural noun, but it's not. What we have here, this is an infinitive. Do you recognize it? It's an infinitive construct. And it's from our verb asa. Like this, usually it's a three-hay verb. And you remember three-hay verbs, the hay becomes an ot in the infinitive construct. This is a cal. And then we add our pronoun suffix or 2mp suffix. So asot would be doing, from the verb to do, to make, because of your doing. You can almost translate that because you did, but because of your doing. Doing what is a direct object marker, even though this is an infinitive construct, it can still take an object, because of your doing all ha-ma'asim. So here it be all the what? The ma'asim, these are deeds. Ma'aseh, usually this ends with a hey, but it's masculine now. It ends with a segol hey, not a kametz hey. So it's usually ma'aseh, and the plural becomes ma'asim. The hey drops off, and you get this hirek yod. Because of the deeds, you can see deed, it's from the same root as to do over here with this verb asa. Because of your doing all the deeds, these ones. So here's our demonstrative adjective here. All these deeds declares, or an oracle of Yahweh. And I spoke. So we have a vav here, and this is going to be a vav consecutive, and this is an imperfect, IMPF, imperfect with a vav consecutive, and this is a PL, first person singular with the aleph performative. You can tell it's a PL. You get the typical signs of a schwa. It's composed schwa because you have the guttural, which is also why you have this lengthened vowel over here. And the verb dabar is usually almost always in the PL anyway. And I spoke to you with our. Actually, it takes this kind of a complex pronoun suffix when you add preposition el. Now, this is the part that's a little bit tricky, but it's something you're going to see a lot of in Jeremiah. What we have here with hashkem, this is an infinitive absolute. If you didn't get that right away, that's okay, but you're going to see this a lot in Jeremiah, and this is a hifil. You have the ha performative here, or prefix actually, and then you have the sereh underneath here. So this is the form pattern for an infinitive absolute hifil from the verb shakim or shakam, which does not exist in the cal. This is used exclusively in the hifil, and it means to get up early and do something. But it's sort of an idiom, and you usually find it with a conjugated verb earlier, and then this expression, getting up early and doing something, and then another infinitive absolute. This again is infinitive absolute. This one's a PL from dabar. So that's the form of dabar. And so you find these two infinitive absolutes, getting up early and speaking. In this case, I spoke, getting up early and speaking. Now that's an idiomatic way of saying I did something over and over again. I did something with a sense of urgency, eagerly. I did something persistently. And in Jeremiah, you're going to see this expression numerous times. You will also see it with the verb, you'll see this verb here, hashkem, infinitive absolute. You will see it with the verb shalak, to send. And for instance, you'll see, and I sent to you, rising up early and sending. In other words, I sent over and over and over. I sent prophets to you. So, and I spoke to you. You can almost translate this, even though I spoke to you over and over again, rising up early and speaking. But, you could translate it and, but in the context it's clearly going to be an adversative. It's but, you did not listen. So this is a regular perfect, 2MP. It's a cow from the verb shama. But you did not listen. Imperfect. This is going to be another imperfect, consecutive. This time it's going to be a cow from kara. And I called or summoned you, direct object marker with our pronoun suffix, and I summoned or I called you, but you did not answer. This is just a cal again from 2MP, perfect, from our verb ana. And you can see that the hey picks up this yod here, which was the original form to it. So, and now this, as I said, there's sort of three dots here. The Lord has said, even though, because of all your deeds, and even though I spoke to you over and over again, and you didn't listen, and because I called to you, and you didn't answer, ... here's what I'm going to do to you. But you're going to have to wait till verse 14 before we see that. So, let's go ahead and hide our work here and look at a few of the translations and see how they handle this. First of all, New American Standard, and now, because, very literal here, and now, because you have done all these things, declares the Lord, and I spoke to you, rising up early and speaking. So they've kept this very literal, rising up early and speaking, but you did not hear or listen. They heard, but they didn't hear in the biblical sense of listening and obeying. And I called to you, but you did not answer. This would be a call to repentance, and they didn't respond back. But a very literal translation there. NIV develops it a little bit, while you were doing all these things. Now, this is not a bad translation, but I did find that they weakened this because of this causal conjunction that's here. I find they've made this almost into a simple temporal, and I thought that's a little bit weak. And now, because you were doing all these things, they made it just while you were doing all these things, declares the Lord. I spoke to you again and again. So that's how they translate this little idiom over here. I spoke to you again and again, but you did not listen. I called to you, but you did not answer. And then one more in the New Jerusalem Bible. And now, since you have done all these things, because of your doing all these things, Yahweh declares, and refused to listen, so then they jump over here, and you did not listen. When I spoke so urgently, so persistently. When I spoke, and I spoke to you, rising up early and speaking. So they said, when I spoke to you so urgently, so persistently. So that's actually pretty good. I liked what they did with that. Or to answer, so they jump to the end here, to answer when I called you. So they've moved things around a little bit, but they've picked up the force of it pretty well. I'm okay with that. The NIV, I thought, just weakened it a little bit too much, or we can stay very literal here. Now, because of this, the Lord is going to do something, and he's coming to his final conclusion of the sermon, as I said, in verses 14 and 15. So check back with us soon as we continue working through this in the weekend edition of the Daily Dose of Hebrew. Shalom.